Hare Krishna, welcome. Good to see you all. Tonight we're continuing our study, our Bhakti Shastri course. We're studying the Nectar of Devotion. And tonight we'll continue our study of Sadhana Bhakti. And tonight we'll be covering chapter 3 of the Nectar of Devotion. So far, in the introduction in chapter 1, we covered Samanya Bhakti. Samanya Bhakti means like a general overview of devotional service. So we covered the 6 types or the 6 features of pure devotional service. We covered what is the goal of pure devotional service, the definition of pure devotional service. And last week, we, in chapter 2, Sadhana Bhakti was begun. So we began to speak about Sadhana Bhakti. Sadhana means practice. Bhakti means devotional service, serving God, serving Krishna. So last week we were discussing the definition of sadhana, or how we are practicing to serve Krishna, to serve God. Originally we were all pure, Nityasiddha Krishna Prema, which means originally we were all pure servants of Krishna. But obviously we've become covered by Maya, or illusion, by the material energy. So now we have to reawaken what was already there, what is naturally there, which is love for Krishna. It's in our heart. But we have to bring that out once again. And the methodology of bringing that out is called sadhana. Sadhana means practice. So we practice serving Krishna. And then naturally that love reawakens. It ignites and it becomes stronger and stronger. So tonight, we're going to go into chapter 3 of the Nectar of Devotion. So if anyone has any questions or comments as we go, then please ask. So chapter 3 is entitled Eligibility of the Candidate for Accepting Devotional Service. So what is the adhikar, the qualification, or the eligibility to begin practicing serving Krishna, serving God? What does qualification need to be? What do you need to possess in order to be qualified or eligible to serve God? Because obviously not everyone is qualified, everyone is eligible. But it means you also have to come to a basic level of eligibility to do it on a continuous basis. Otherwise many people would be doing it. People aren't doing it. They're not interested. Why? Because they're doing the wrong activities. And by doing the wrong activities, that covers their natural propensity to serve Krishna. And that's why, even though some people, I know people who say to me, this is the right thing and I should be doing it, but I'll do it later in my life. Yeah, well, it's because they're distracted by what we call Maya or illusion, material activities. So being distracted by material activities, because that is powerful, those material activities, then one forgets and one loses the impetus to serve Krishna. So that's what's going to be discussed. What is the eligibility to serve Krishna in a continuous way? Anyone's eligible to do it momentarily or for a day or something, but to do it, make it your lifestyle, make it your commitment in your life, then that requires certain qualifications or eligibilities. The Nectar of Devotion's introduction defines pure devotional service. Chapter 1 describes the 6 characteristics of pure devotion, and chapter 2 describes its practice. This third chapter will describe the basic qualifications for practicing devotional service. So it's very systematic, and that's one of the important features of our scriptures, of our teachings. They're very systematic. In Melbourne, Monday and Tuesday nights, at the moment I'm teaching Caitanya Mahaprabhu, which it's all the golden books on the 3rd shelf down. It's a huge volume. It's like a huge 11,000 verses in the Caitanya Mahaprabhu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is on the second shelf just there, that's 18,000 verses. So that's a huge study. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita is 11,000 verses. Now, one thing which is apparent when you carefully study the book is how systematic it is. It's not written whimsically. It is systematic. And something you'll realize when you study this book, it's extremely systematic. The people who are writing these books, these pure souls who write these books, 400 or 500 years ago, they are incredibly gifted and qualified. We say they are empowered by God himself, Shakshadhari. They have the power of God. Krishna Shakti Vina. It says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you don't have God's power invested in you, you couldn't write something like this. So they're extremely qualified. And this book is extremely systematic. It takes us from the beginning to the very final stages of devotional service. So this is something that becomes apparent. And what it does is when you understand how systematic these things are, it increases your faith. Because, at least for me, I realize that these books are not written by human beings. Because the person has to be inspired by God, directed by God himself, to be able to write something this profound, this pure, which will have such an effect on someone's life. As it says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this book will create a revolution in the consciousness of the living entities. So we see that those who dedicate themselves to studying and practicing and applying the teachings, it creates a revolution in their life. Their lives become revolutionized, change. Sometimes it's a revolution in a country. It means let's change the whole country because the country is stagnant. So let's change it all. So that's what happens in our own life. Sometimes our life becomes stagnant, or we're suffering, or we're conditioned to become attached to suffering in this world. Some people actually enjoy misery. It's actually it's a strange phenomenon that some people actually enjoy being miserable. They're actually attached to it. If there's not a problem, they'll create one. That's the definition of insanity. There's no problem, let's create one. Right. So people are like this, but the people who are writing these books are well above that state of consciousness. And by following what they teach in these books, we will also rise above that state of consciousness. So that's the power of, so that's why we have to study these books. That's why Srila Prabhupada emphasized so much studying these books. Because if you do, you'll rise above the mundane state of consciousness, which is in this world. Devotional service is causeless. Therefore, there are no prerequisites for taking up the practice of sadhana bhakti. In the beginning, we do not even need knowledge and detachment. The attraction to serve Krishna is the only requirement. So this is an interesting synopsis of the beginning of this chapter. Devotional service is causeless. Anyone can be given the opportunity to practice devotional service. So we offer our food to God, to Krishna. You might have seen when we cook, we offer it. Yeah, so you saw that. So we offer the food to God. So when someone takes the prasadam, takes the offered food, the spiritualized food, they don't realize that is, they just think it's vegetarian food. They don't realize the consciousness which is being cooked in. They don't realize the transformation of the stuff when it's been accepted by God, by Krishna. They don't understand that. But when they do honor it, when they do taste it, they become affected by it. It purifies their soul, their consciousness, because it is spiritual food. Matter is being transformed into spirit. Actually, matter is spirit. It's transformation of spirit. And when it's used in the service of God, of Krishna, it becomes spiritualized once again. So that's why devotional service is causeless. Anyone can perform devotional service. Anyone can serve Krishna just by eating the food offered to him. You are honoring the person. That's part of our culture. Like we have a culture that if someone's saintly, if there's a saintly person in our, if we're associating with a saintly person and we have the opportunity to take their remnants of their food, we understand that will purify our consciousness. So sometimes we'll do that. We'll take the remnants of an advanced pure soul, because that will purify your consciousness by taking their remnants. So that has an effect that purifies the consciousness. Whereas someone may not even understand that's what's taking place, but they'll become purified regardless. That's the power of the situation. So devotional service is causeless. There are no prerequisites for taking up the practice of sadhana bhakti. In the beginning, we don't even need knowledge and detachment. It means we don't need qualification, because many of us are not very knowledgeable. Many of us are not very learned by nature. We may not be learned people. And we're not so detached from this world, which is something that many people are like. They're not detached from this world, they're attached to this world. Even still, that's not a disqualification to serve God, to serve Krishna. You can still serve Krishna and gradually get purified. Right? Even if you're not learned, you don't understand the science very well, and even if you are not detached from this world, you're still very attached to it, but still you make progress. That's the nature of devotional service. That's how powerful it is. So, the attraction to serve Krishna is the only requirement. So you just need an attraction to serve Krishna, to want to serve him. Prabhupada writes on page 29, one may attain a little bit of attraction to Sri Krishna, but at the same time may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. So Prabhupada is saying here, welcome, good to see you. Prabhupada is saying here that we may still be very much attached to fruitive activities and sense enjoyment, right? Still attached to it, but it's not a disqualification to take up. I mean, it is a disqualification. It's not a disqualification to take up or to serve Krishna. You can't go all the way. You can't become completely pure as long as you're attached to this material world. But it's not a disqualification for beginning the process and making progress.
Being attached to fruitive activities.
And sense gratification, as Prabhupada says. Srila Rupa Goswami makes this point by quoting Lord Krishna's statement to Uddhava from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 20, Verse 8. So one thing that becomes apparent when we study the Caitanya Charitamrita, when we study the Bhakti-rasmrta-sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, is that, and the other writings of the Goswamis, the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and so forth, one thing that becomes very apparent is that the supreme authority that they call on when they're making their points is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? It's considered the topmost authority. That was Lord Chaitanya's teaching. It is esteemed, the book on the second shelf, the large volumes. It is considered the topmost authority. When that is quoted, that is the supreme authority. Because when you make a point in spiritual circles, when you are teaching others, you must quote from some scripture, from some shastric source to authorize your point. Right? Otherwise, how do we know? You might just be saying it. Yeah, and so many people do that. They make up their own. Yeah, was it like 5 new religions every week in America? Yeah, I'll make a religion this week. Yeah, I'll just invent something. So it's not authorized. Whereas everything that we practice in our tradition, it's authorized by some ancient book, some ancient teachings. So therefore, we know that it is an authorized. So you have to quote. If you're going to make a philosophical point, you have to quote the authority. You have to say it is from such and such. So Srimad Bhagavatam is considered by Lord Chaitanya and his followers to be the topmost authority of all the scriptures. It's called Grantha Raj, the king of the scriptures. And in particular, the 11th canto, which is a large section of the 11th canto, the 11th part, is called the Uddhava Gita, which is spoken by Krishna himself just before he departs this world. The Bhagavad Gita is actually smaller and less intimate than the Uddhava Gita. The Uddhava Gita is Krishna speaks directly about the gopis, for example. He doesn't do that in the Bhagavad Gita. So it's considered even more intimate than the Bhagavad Gita, the Uddhava Gita. And in particular, I've noticed that when the acharyas, the great spiritual teachers, are trying to make a philosophical point, they particularly quote from the Uddhava Gita, from the 11th canto of the Bhagavad. So that's what Rupa Goswami is doing right here. Chapter 20, verse 8. So he says, this is Krishna himself speaking, "My dear Uddhava, only by exceptional fortune does someone become attracted to me. And even if one is not completely detached from fruitive activities, or is not completely attached to devotional service, such service is quickly effective." It's a very powerful statement by Krishna himself. Exceptional fortune. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavana Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bija. It says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Bhagavan. Bhagavan means very fortunate. We're very fortunate. You're very fortunate that you came here. At least that's what we think. Well, it's good that you think like that too. Yeah, it makes it more harmonious when you also think. Not everyone appreciates. Not everyone appreciates. But if someone does think like that, if someone thinks, "Oh, I'm very fortunate that I came in contact with this," this is exceptional, actually, that someone becomes attracted to Krishna. This movement, it's called the Hare Krishna movement publicly. Everyone quotes it, "Oh, they're the Hare Krishnas." You know, why? Because we chant Hare Krishna on the streets all over the world. You might have seen us. Yeah, so, you know, that's why everyone calls us the Hare Krishnas. But actually our name, our legal name, is International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON. That's our actual legal name. That's what we're recognized as legally. So Prabhupada gave that name, ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Now, when he, what did I say? When they register? There's another word though. Yeah, when they registered, but there's another one. When it was registered as a society in New York in 1966, it was Prabhupada registered as International Society for Krishna Consciousness. But someone said to Prabhupada, make it more broad, call it God Consciousness. So we would have been ISKCON. Yeah, it would have been ISKCON. ISKCON. ISKCON sounds better. There's ISKCON. But, yeah. But someone said that to Prabhupada. Krishna's too. No, Prabhupada said, no, it must be Krishna. Because that is the greatest fortune. When you understand Krishna is God, that's the greatest fortune. Because that means you're now coming very close to perfection, to self-realization, to actual God realization. So that's a very extraordinary realization to have. Right? If someone realizes that, they're very advanced. There's 8 billion of us here on this planet. There's only about 10 million, maybe more, who understand that Krishna is the original form of God. So it's a rare thing, right? So if you understand that, that's considered to be a great fortune. So that's what this book is teaching, this great fortune. And even if one is not completely detached from fruitive activities, or is not completely attached to devotional service, such service is quickly effective. That's Krishna himself speaking. Krishna himself is saying that even if we're not completely detached from this world, but we're serving him, very soon you will get to him. Why? Because he will remove those attachments that you have. Because he'll see the person is trying to get to me, but they're struggling due to their attachments in this world. He'll remove those attachments. And we've seen it many times. Yeah. Yeah, he's merciful. That's his nature. Many times we've seen it. Devotees get diseases, for example, which take their lives. So maybe they couldn't overcome their attachment to this world. So then Krishna just shut it all down. So, okay, now I'll finish your body off. And then you have to become attached. So Prana Prabhu just very recently, I was with him and, there was no fear in his consciousness. He passed away only a few months ago, but there was no fear in his consciousness because, Krishna just took, maybe there's some material desire was still there. Krishna took everything away and he surrendered to Krishna. So as it's saying here, even if you're not completely detached, still devotional service is so powerful, it will lead you to perfection. So that's the message which is being given. In other words, even if one is still attached to material life, he can begin practicing devotional service if he simply has some attraction to it. So achieving eligibility. Now, Prabhupada continues on page 29 to discuss, now he's going to, or Rupa Goswami, the author, and Prabhupada in the summary study, they're going to define what is the eligibility to practice devotional service. Attraction to Krishna is the only qualification for devotional service. But how does one get this attraction? Only by the mercy of a pure devotee. So actually, it's described, I think, in the Madhurya Kadambini by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. How do we get the opportunity to begin to serve God? It's by the mercy or by the compassion of a Majjhima Adhikari, or someone who has dedicated their life to helping others come to Krishna, to God. That's how we get that's why we keep this place running, this Hare Krishna Valley. What's the point of it? The point of it is to bring other people to Krishna. Some people just walk in here and they never leave. Sometimes it happens. People just walk in and they don't leave. Some people, it happens like that. So that's the point of this project. Why do we have a situation like this? Why do we create these situations? I think now there's 850 temples around the world. I think that's the figure. And, maybe 200 farms, something like that, 160 or something farms. Can't remember how many restaurants, like hundreds and hundreds of restaurants. All these things. Why do we start all these centers? Because it gives people the opportunity to connect to Krishna, to connect to God. Otherwise, what's the point of their life? So, as it is being said here, this is the qualification. When someone is very kind upon us, they give us the opportunity to take to devotional service. And if we're intelligent, so it says in at the 11th canto, actually, on the Bhagavatam, it says in the famous verse describing Lord Chaitanya's descent, it says, Sumedha Saha. What is our qualification to take up devotional service? intelligence. But what type of intelligence? Sumed, good intelligence, sumedasa, which means purified intelligence. A lot of intelligent people out there, but their intelligence is not pure. It's contaminated. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, intelligence is the or actually Prabhupada says, Krishna says, but Prabhupada explains, he says, the intelligence is the capital of lust. Because when you want to make schemes to enjoy in this world, the intelligence does it for you. Oh, let me do it like this. Let me get there. So people are very intelligent, but they're using their intelligence for the wrong thing. So when someone becomes purified in intelligence and he understands the purpose of my life is to reach Krishna, then with that purified intelligence, he takes up devotional service. That's his qualification. So that's called sumedasa, means good intelligence. Where does good intelligence come from? How to get purified intelligence? Comes from prasadam. Yeah, comes from prasadam. Comes from this holy food that we eat. So get into the fridge as much as you can. Very good, very good. Because what it does, it purifies intelligence. We've seen it. It's the demarcation between atheism, going away from God, and coming towards Him, theism. It's prasadam. That's what it is. Because when you take prasadam, you become purified in the mind, in the intelligence, and then you can understand. This is what I should be doing with my life.
Does Shraddha come before or faith come before that or after that?
It's developed by that.
By intelligence.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the process of purifying your intelligence, then you develop faith. You develop Shraddha. Because your intelligence is saying, "Oh, this is good. I have to keep doing this," and that's faith. It's the same thing. They're like interconnected, so to speak. So it happened. Yeah, they develop together, purified.
And that's good to start or an attraction to devotional service. You have to have faith.
Yeah. Yeah, so we could say they're the same thing, or they're synonymous, or they're interreliant. That your purified intelligence say, keep doing this, keep doing this. Simultaneously, that's faith saying, keep doing this, keep doing this.
Faith process.
Yeah.
Faith.
Yeah, it comes from experience. When you experience something good, you want to keep doing it. Like the first time you ate like a halava or gulab jamun, or you remember maybe your first prasadam, mine was camphor sweet rice. Still remember the taste. The very first time I ever had prasadam, camphor sweet rice. What was that? Yeah. So I had 3 helpings. Because I said, "Oh, can I have some more?" "Yeah." "Do you want some more?" "Yeah." "Okay, keep going. What's this?" Like that. So by experience, then we want to continue. We want to keep experiencing that. I came back to the temple. "Oh, do you have any more of that?" "No, we don't have that, but we have something else nice today." "Oh, what's that?" This is, my first Lord Nityananda Triyodashi, Radhacharan Prabhu made a walnut, date, and apricot halava. I can still remember, and gulabs, and some sort of sweet rice. I can believe it. I'll never forget it. The day I die, I'll be laying there on the ground, taking my final breath, and I'll be thinking about that.
Sure is.
I'll be thinking about it, because that's the potency of the prasadam. So that develops our faith. That purifies intelligence, gives us the ability to become more interested. Prabhupada says, this is page 29 still, he's talking about eligibility for starting devotional service. Prabhupada says, people generally think of on account of his association with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction to Sri Krishna. So here Prabhupada is saying it's pure devotees. He's saying people are really serious about their relationship with Krishna, with God. By being with them, you will also develop that. You'll become like whoever you associate with. Prabhupada, said that many times. Associate with drunkards, you become a drunkard. Associate with spiritual people, you become a spiritual person. So that's up to who you associate with. So is renunciation, vairagya, a prerequisite for taking up devotional service? People generally think that renunciation is a prerequisite for beginning spiritual life, but for devotional service, it is not required. In fact, too much renunciation can be an impediment to bhakti. If we are too detached from emotional and sensual activities, we will not be inclined to perform devotional service because devotional service entails use of the senses and emotions. So Prabhupada actually said to Umapati Swami, who was one of his first 80 disciples, one of his very first disciples who joined in 1966, Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness means the middle path. Not too much detachment, but not too much attachment. That's what it means. We shouldn't be too detached from this world because we may become too hard-hearted. And we shouldn't be too attached because then we'll be too distracted. So Krishna consciousness means the middle path. So renunciation is not required. We don't have to be very renounced. We don't have to be living like monks. When we were monks, some of us were monks. Mani Gripa and myself were monks at one point. We used to sleep on the floor, cold showers, all our possessions in one small wardrobe, things like that. That's not required for your whole life. It's good. It's a good practice, a good way to start spiritual life, but not required for everyone to do that to become Krishna conscious. It does have advantages. So 3 grades of eligible candidates. As previously described, the impetus for Vaidhi Bhakti is a scriptural injunction. Therefore, our knowledge of and faith in the scriptures is a major consideration in determining our eligibility to advance. A person's depth of faith and knowledge places him in one of 3 classes of candidates, Uttama, Madhyama, and Kanishta Adhikari. So we discussed this in the Nectar of Instruction, the 3 levels of advancement. Someone who's just beginning, who's not very spiritually realized, someone who's on the medium level, and then the very high people who are very progressed spiritually. So these are the 3 levels. So first, Prabhupada on page 29, Prabhupada discusses the Uttama Adhikari, the very advanced personality. He is expert in the study of relevant scriptures, and he is also expert in putting forward arguments in terms of those scriptures. So someone who's very progressed spiritually, they have deep faith in their spiritual practices, but they can also substantiate everything they're doing from the ancient teachings, the ancient scriptures. So that's someone who's very progressed. That's something that we should aspire for, to be like that. Then it says on page 29, going into page 30, he understands perfectly that the ultimate goal of life is to attain to the transcendental loving service of Krishna. And he knows that Krishna is the only object of worship and love. He attains firm faith in the scriptures by understanding with all reason and arguments. So this is the most advanced qualification. This is what we should aspire for, to become qualified like that. Some of my students are mobile. That's funny. It's funny when you give them a class, you see someone walking around their house with their phone. Funny. Okay. And then now the next qualification is the Madhyama Adhikari. This is on page 30. The candidate with medium qualification to practice pure devotional service has strong faith, but is somewhat lacking in scriptural knowledge. Prabhupada says, he is not expert in arguing on the strength of revealed scripture, but he has firm faith in the objective. So that may be a description of some of us. Maybe we can't quote to you exactly where it says in the scripture that we should be doing this or should be doing that, but we're convinced we should be doing it, right? Maybe, and then, sometimes someone will say, oh, where does it say that? And you're saying, oh, it's somewhere in the Bhagavad-gita. Just look. It is there. I know it's there, but I can't tell you exactly where it is. Sometimes it's like that. So that's the medium level of faith. So that's where many of us may be. And the Kanishta Adhikari. Kanishta Adhikari is he's on the lower level. Kanishta Adhikari can be someone who's not very advanced yet, who's just beginning spiritual life, or it could be someone who's been practicing for a long time, but really doesn't get it. In other words, can't work out how to do it properly, how to relate to others properly, for example. And we know examples like that. Sometimes we see it. People have been practicing for many years, but they really just can't relate to everyone else who's practicing. They've just got like a very strange mentality. They just don't really understand how to gel with the others. So that's what we call Kanishta Adhikari. Or it could be someone who's just starting. They just haven't really worked things out yet. They're good, but they just really haven't progressed properly yet. So the candidate with the least qualification to perform regulated devotional service has weak faith and weak scriptural knowledge, and can therefore be easily swayed or by superior arguments. So when your faith is not very strong, in the beginning, sometimes our faith is not very strong, so we can be tested. So we have to come to a point where we develop deep faith, so we can't be swayed. Like many of us, we can't be swayed, right? We will never leave this. Like we'll always practice this. Maybe we don't understand all of the places where it describes everything, but we just will never leave this. That's Majjhima Adhikari. Right? Kanishta Adhikari may be swayed because his faith is not firm yet. Still battling too much with the ego or the material desires or different things. Prabhupada says on page 30, unlike the second class devotee who also cannot put forward arguments and evidence from the scripture, but still has all faith in the objective, the neophyte has no firm faith in the objective. Thus he is called the neophyte devotee. So he just doesn't have firm faith in the objective. Sometimes you meet people like this, they just don't. And as actually the author of this book, which is His Holiness Dhanada Swami, who's one of my Shiksha gurus, he actually said to me one time, he said, many of the members of our movement don't actually understand our philosophy. They're part of it, but they don't really understand it. We don't want to be like that. That's why we study the books. That's why we have these courses and study groups, so we understand it. Because there are people who are within our society who don't actually understand our philosophy. And sometimes you hear deviant philosophies coming up. I was up in New Govardhan a couple of years ago and I was speaking to some devotees. We have another farm up near Byron Bay. And someone said to me, Prabhupada said, I said, well, Prabhupada said that. He couldn't substantiate it. And I said, I've never heard that ever. I knew it was wrong, actually. So I just said to him, so, if we don't study properly, then everything will go off course. So we have to know the books. And, one of the first things I did when we moved here, when Mani and I came here 17 years ago, one of the very first things I did when I got here, I got a complete library of all of Prabhupada's teachings. One of the first things I did when I got here, because if the world does go crazy, we know it's crazy, but if it goes off the cliff, they're on the side of the cliff at the moment, but if they go over And we had to start again. Prabhupada said you have to have everything. That's why I did that. Yeah, and then in my house, I've got a lot of stuff there as well, purposely. Why? Because, if we have to start again, we need the teachings. Because what if? Well, me and Latoya, I went down on One Ponds today getting supplies and things for the farm, and a couple of the shops and restaurants and things were shut, and they had a sign on the door saying, what did they say? Yeah. So if the internet shuts down, just imagine if it shuts down today because of a massive solar flare or something, which is possible. Every life as we know it right now is obliterated. We have to go back to the way it was 50 years ago. Was it?
80s.
Yeah, 80s-ish. Yeah, 80s-ish, 70s-ish, 50s-ish. Yeah, you probably have to go back to about the 20s or something to really get it kind of similar. 80s-ish. There's a lot of there's a lot of still connection behind the scenes. Computers were quite developed. I mean, not like now, but they were quite developed. But the point is that if we do have to start again, we need all these teachings because everything could just change overnight at any time.
So, as the technological age, things get also even.
True. Yeah, good point. Good point. And that's also why our leaders, the GBC, another thing I do, which I've got to update, is we were advised to have about 30 years of our Vaishnav calendar in printed form, which I've kept in the office. So I've got about 20 years worth, but that's running out. So now I have to print that again. That's something I thought of recently. So that's another point. Because imagine we don't know when. Imagine if everything did shut down. We know when Krishna's birthday was. That would be not pleasant. So I'll get that. That's another thing that I'll get done. So the point is we need to understand these teachings very deeply, so that things do not deviate, and we need to have them all written, so that our faith is not manipulated. So for those who don't have faith in the objective, Bhagavad Gita describes 4 types of pious people who approach Krishna. And Prabhupada explains that on page 31 and also from page 31 all the way to page 33, he's describing, based on the Bhagavad Gita, that piety is a precursor for developing faith in bhakti. It's much easier, and you see this. Someone who's pious or good-hearted, good-natured, much easier for them to take up devotional service. Yeah, that's a good example. It's a superior birth. Much easier. And I remember years ago, we used to sell these books on the street. That was when we were monks. We used to sell our books on the street. That was one of our main services. And I remember, very clearly that we would have qualifying questions. Are you from here or from out of town? Yeah, we'd always say that because, they said, are you from Melbourne or from out of town? If you're from Melbourne, oh, great, you get a book. If you're from out of town, oh, great, you get a book. So, it's a qualifying question. And, we'd stop people. And I noticed, because then after speaking to them for a few minutes, when we're trying to sell them one of our books, we would say, part of the conversation, we'd say, what do you do for a living? And so many people said, I'm a nurse. Because they're natural caregivers. They're pious people. They're good-hearted people generally. They care about others more than themselves, possibly. That's a qualification for taking up devotional service to Krishna. People who are too into themselves, very hard to take up devotional service. People who are not pious, people who are addicted to materialistic activities and sense gratification, it's very hard to take up devotional service. And they know they should do it, but they find it very difficult because they're too much absorbed in material nature. So Prabhupada describes, he says, this is page 31. There's 4 types of people that Krishna speaks about in the Bhagavad Gita. These 4 types of devotees have been described in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and they have all been accepted as pious. Without becoming pious, no one can come to devotional service. You have to be a good-hearted person. That's the beginning. That's just the qualification. That's not the goal. No, the goal is not just to be, a lovely, I'm lovely, you're lovely, we're all lovely. And that's nice, but that's not the goal. I know people like that. They're just lovely people, but they're not interested in serving God. Right? That's nice. It's nice to be a good person. That's the beginning, but it's not the goal. The goal is to serve God. But you can't serve God unless you're a good person. So that's the precursor. So that's one of the eligibilities. You have to be pious, a pious person. And that's why we emphasize in the Hare Krishna movement, like we run a lot of retreats here, for example. The type of retreats, the next retreat we've got coming up in 2 or 3 weeks is a vegetarian cooking retreat. Right? So why do we have retreats like that? Because we teach people to be pious. At least be vegetarian. You can't do anything else, at least do that. So that builds like a basis that they can then progress from. So that's why we do these different things, and then we interlace it with spiritual discussions and chanting, kirtan, and things like that as well. So then Prabhupada says on page 31, without pious activities, if a man is in a distressed condition, he becomes an agnostic, a communist, or something like that. Because he does not firmly believe in God, he thinks he can adjust his distressed condition by totally disbelieving in him. So it's very unfortunate. There's many good people, but, when life becomes difficult, some people don't turn towards God. They don't turn towards Krishna. They think communism is going to fix the world. Or they think socialism, or as Prabhupada says here, or they become agnostic. Maybe there is no God. That doesn't solve the actual problems of the world. All the different type of isms which are out there. Bhakti is causeless and independent. It cannot be a result of ritualistic pious deeds. This is a very interesting point, actually. Sometimes people think you come to devotional service because you've been a good person, but that's not actually the truth. Right? It's the best platform to begin devotional service. But we see in our teachings, there are examples like Mrigarhi, the hunter. That's a nice example. Mrigarhi was a hunter, and he wouldn't even kill the animals outright. He used to shoot them with bow and arrow, shoot them with arrows. And he would actually enjoy seeing them die slowly and suffering. So he wouldn't kill them. He'd shoot them and then they'd die. And he'd actually enjoy that. And then he became a devotee. So it doesn't mean you being pious means you will become a devotee of God, a devotee of Krishna, but it's a definite advantage. But service to Krishna is so powerful, even someone who is very impious, they can also take to it. Yeah, you like to talk it up like, I was worse than Jagai and Mados. I'm the most fallen. We've heard it all before. Spare us, please. Here we go. If I had $1 for every time I heard that story, it would be a millionaire. Okay. So, the point is that it doesn't matter what we were before. It's what we do with our life now. And we all came from bad backgrounds to various degrees. But it's what we do with it from now on. Okay, we made mistakes. Now let's rectify it. But of course, if you're pious, it's a lot easier. You see people like Bhakti-rasmrta-Swami. And people, they're just so pious. They're saints. And you see how effective they become when they become devotees. They're so powerful, because they're so pious. Yeah, Goba, very good example. Yeah. Yeah, I was spending a bit of time with him yesterday. Yeah, the guy is just pure. Naishtika. Never touched a woman. Imagine someone who's never touched a woman. Or you meet a woman who's never touched a man. It's like, that's rare. It's like, that's pure, that's potent. So, they do exist amongst us. It's a great advantage to be like that. So then on page 32, Prabhupada's discussing about wisdom, renunciation, and pure devotional service. So Prabhupada says, it can be concluded that a person who is free from the bodily concept of life is an eligible candidate for pure devotional service. So we're talking about different levels. To begin the process of devotional service, of sadhana bhakti, you can come from any position. But if you want to become what we call a pure devotee, or someone who can actually become eligible and qualified to enter the kingdom of God, which is our goal, then you have to be free from the bodily concept of life. That's why Prabhupada emphasized more. I mean, if you had to choose one line from Prabhupada's teachings that he repeated more than any other line, what would it be? Yeah, that's the line. All right. You are not this body. Because and what's the first thing Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita? You are not this body. Yeah, Dehinosmin, yeah. Na tvivaham jatunasam. These verses are describing you are not the body. Why? Because to become a pure devotee, you have to realize that. That's why Krishna starts the Bhagavad Gita like that. That's why Prabhupada emphasized that point more than any other point. You are not this body. Because when you understand your soul, then you can become you can go into the kingdom of God. So that is the qualification to develop pure devotional service. Now, the four people who are mentioned in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, who are the inquisitive, the distressed, those seeking after artha or wealth or something, and those seeking knowledge, it's described who is the best of the four. This is Prabhupada from page 31. Prabhupada says, a wise man who becomes attached to Krishna does not want any return from him, either in the form of relieving distress or gaining money. That means that from the beginning, his basic principle of attachment to Krishna, more or less, is love. So that means one who comes because they want knowledge, they want to know God, know Krishna. That person is the most qualified. That's the best platform to begin from. I mean, I know where I came from. I came from distress. That's why I came. Because I wasn't happy. So that's why I started. That's not the highest level. The highest level is just, you just want knowledge. You want to know Krishna. And when you come for that, then you can develop love for Krishna very quickly from that point. Then Prabhupada discusses that liberation comes automatically. This is also described in previous chapters. Rupa Goswami makes it clear that a pure devotee must be free from the desire for liberation, mukti, and sense gratification, bhukti. He compares these to ghosts and witches. Now Prabhupada quotes, The material desire to enjoy the material world and the desire to become liberated from material bondage are considered to be two witches. This is actually from Chaitanya Charitamrita. And they haunt one like ghosts. As long as these witches remain within the heart, how can one feel transcendental bliss? As long as these two witches are remaining in the heart, there is no possibility of enjoying the transcendental bliss of devotional service. So if you're too attached to sense gratification, enjoying your body in this world, how can you know God fully, properly? If you want to become liberated, merge into God. I was explaining this last night to a couple of young people who came to the temple. They said they want to come to India with me. And one of the girls only been coming for 2 months to the temple. Very new, very new. So I drilled her. I said, do you really understand what this is about? Because if you want to come with me, you're going to go into this deep immersion. And you don't want to be there if you're not ready for this, because it will be too much for you. So I was drilling her. I was saying, what do you actually believe? You know, and she was answering it. She was good. She's a sincere person. But I said, you have to understand this. If you want to merge into God as opposed to serving God, then you're not ready for this trip. You'll misconstrue the whole thing. So it says here that anyone who wants to merge into God, become God, or is too much attached to sense gratification in this world, they cannot take to pure devotional service. So this is the qualification which is being spoken of. So in conclusion, for this chapter, chapter 3, it's a very beautiful chapter, as all of them are. The first point is, the only qualification to begin devotional service is the devotee's mercy. He who enthuses us with attraction to the Supreme Lord. So that's the only qualification to begin this, right? You come in contact with the Hare Krishnas and somehow they engage you in the service of Krishna. The second point from this chapter is the qualification to advance in sadhana bhakti depends upon the maturity of our knowledge and the faith that we have in our scriptures. So how deep we can go into this means how much knowledge we have of the scriptures. That's why we have to hear continuously. Hear and hear and hear. Hear more, learn more. The more you learn, the deeper your faith becomes. That's why we do it. That's why we have classes every day. And the third point from this chapter is the qualification to practice devotional service is liberation from the bodily concept of life, characterized by the realization that we should abandon all desires and endeavor only to please Krishna. So when you give up your material desires and your bodily concept of life, then you can really serve Krishna, you can really serve God, and you will accelerate in your service. At the very end of the chapter, page 33, Prabhupada says, or actually it's a quote. Actually, it's a quote from the Shikshastika, which is written by Lord Chaitanya himself. O dear son of Nanda, I do not want any material happiness in the shape of many followers, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamaye, mama jamani, jamanishri, bhagavata bhakti hoitaki twai. This verse is the fourth verse of the Shikshastika, and this verse is the, how do we say it? It's the platform of Nishta, and it means to be steady in devotional service. You have to be free from material desires, to be steady in devotional service, where you're not fluctuating and going up and down, battling your material desires all the time. My dear son of Nanda, I do not want any material happiness in the shape of many followers, nor immense opulence in wealth, nor do I want cessation from material existence. I may take birth many times, one after another. But what I pray from you is that my devotion unto you always remains unflinching. So Prabhupada quotes Shikshastika to finish, or Rupa Goswami actually, to finish this chapter to show us the mood that we have to develop if we want to advance in devotional service. Okay. Any points? Thank you all for coming. Very nice to see you all. There won't be any classes for the next 2 weeks. Atoya and I will be leaving to Brindavan on Saturday, so I won't give any classes while I'm in India because it's going to be too hot. Anyway, it's not that. It's just like, yeah, I don't know what our schedule is there, so I can't commit because I don't want to not turn up. So 2 weeks, for the next 2 weeks, just study the chapters that we've studied so far, understand them. All the classes are recorded, so if you need to replay them, you can go through. And on the 10th of April, which is 3 Wednesdays from now, we'll resume with chapter 4. And chapter 4 is going to talk about liberation. Yeah, getting rid of that desire, which is a great impediment for bhakti. Okay, so we'll see you all soon. Thank you for coming. Hare Krishna. Good to see you all. See you on Saturday.
Yes, yes, I
Haribol.
Haribol.